with my own two hands. Make a better place with my own two hands. Make a kinder place with my own two hands. With my own two hands. With my own two hands.
T'as changé mon langue avec deux mains moins. Fais un monde qui vit bon avec deux mains moins. Fais un monde qui vit douce avec deux mains moins. Avec deux mains moins. Avec deux mains moins.
Gonna make it a brighter place. Gonna make it a safer place. Gonna help human rights with my own two hands.
Je veux changer le monde
Avec mes deux mains.
faire un monde meilleur,
Avec mes deux mains.
faire un monde plus doux,
Avec mes deux mains.
avec mes
deux mains. Avec mes deux mains. Avec mes deux mains. Avec mes deux mains.
I'm gonna make it a brighter place. I'm gonna make it a safer place. I'm gonna help the human race. And I hold you, and I comfort you. But you got to use your own two hands. With my own
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. We thank you all for coming. My name is Cliff DuRand, and I am your service leader today. Whether you are a first-time visitor or a regular attendee of UUFSMA, we hope that today you enjoy the excellent and varied music for which we are well known, that your mind will be stimulated, your soul nourished, and that you will meet and make new friends. Our fellowship is diverse. We are comprised of people from various religious traditions or none. We welcome diversity of race, culture, gender identity, or sexual orientation. All are welcome in this fellowship. We encourage you to bring your questioning mind and your expansive heart to share in fellowship, reflection, and great music. At the end of the service, you will have the opportunity to join a small breakout room for conversation. Or you have the option of staying in the main room where we can dialogue with our speaker today. And now we turn to Stephanie Studenski for an update from our COVID-19 task force.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Studenski reporting for the UUFSMA task force today. The COVID-19 Delta variant is still leading to increases in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. while the most recent data suggests that risks are much higher among the unvaccinated and that vaccinated people overall have a low risk of serious illness from the virus, the majority of vaccinated people who are seriously ill with COVID are older adults. Also, keep in mind that COVID illness that does not lead to hospitalization can still make you pretty sick. Please wear well-fitting masks, especially when indoors away from home. Think carefully about where you go and maintain social distance, especially around groups that may be unvaccinated or aren't wearing masks. The task force wishes to remind everyone that persons who have just traveled internationally, including new arrivals to San Miguel, should undergo COVID testing 2 to 3 days after arrival and isolate until testing negative, or isolate for 10 days. And now Cathy will light the chalice and Cliff will offer opening words.
In this time when hope is hard to find, with this flame and today's service, we aim to restore hope. Music is often able to buoy our spirits, to lift up hope. This is particularly so with the music born of social struggles. It expresses the hope for a better world. Lift Every Voice and Sing, one of the musical selections we will feature today, is known as the Black National Anthem. Lyrics by African-American poet James Weldon Johnson, and put to music by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson. It was written during one of the darkest times of Jim Crow racism. Nevertheless, it expresses the spirit of hope, the hope that our dark past has taught us, the hope of a people's struggle against injustice. Hope is also found in the struggles of working people, as expressed in the Union song, Solidarity Forever, which we will also hear today. Their strength lies in their solidarity, and it is this that gives hope. Our speaker today is philosopher Ron Aronson. His book, Reviving Social Hope, is a message for these times. His view is that it is when we emerge from our private spaces to come together in collective action that we feel an empowerment that gives us hope. So we begin with the civil rights anthem that has given many of us hope through the years. We shall overcome. If we were all together now, we could enjoy singing it, joining our voices with one another, as so many of us have done in marches and demonstrations. Imagine yourself, though, as now we join Pete Seeger in a video edited by Cathy Canepa in singing We Shall Overcome.
Here's a song you can help me on. A great song. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Someday. important verse was the one they made up in Montgomery, Alabama. Said, we are not afraid. There's a lot of people in this world, they know what's right and what's wrong, but they're not going to do anything about it. Somebody has to be willing to sing, we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Today,
Good morning, I'm Dan Newspiel, your fellowship president. Please join me and Diego Vargas in reading our spoken covenant, which will appear on your screen. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Good morning. My name is Mark Johanningsmeyer, and I'm here to lead us in sharing our joys and concerns. When we in this fellowship study and ponder an issue of great importance, it engages many parts of our beings, our minds, our wills, our creativity, our passion, our collective wisdom, and collective action. These are words of James Conlon. Where there are ruptures in creation, we are aroused to peace. Where there is disquietude, we are invited to achieve a new kind of balance. Where there is discord, we are called to resonance. In and through the pain of our planet, we are called to make our covenant with the earth. When we witness collapse, when we witness devastation around us, our finest scientists, observers report that within the heart of the universe lie cosmic peace, profound harmony, intricate balance that calls for awe and reverence and a commitment to align ourselves with the wisdom of this world. One small way that we do this is the simple act of sharing our joys and sorrows and concerns whenever we come together. This week, the Reverend Tom Rossiello received by email some joys and concerns, and he has passed them along for sharing this morning. Now, for any joys or concerns that you'd like to share with the community right now, you may click on the chat box link you'll see at the bottom of the screen and type them there for all to see. And if you'd like to submit any joys or concerns for inclusion in next week's service, just email them to Tom Rossiello. And today, with each of our joys and concerns, we will light a candle. The first, we acknowledge the accelerating warming of our planet, the disruption of the Earth's climate, and the ways that these changes are forcing huge numbers of people from their homes to search for new places that might sustain their lives. This candle is for the people and our leaders to speak the truth and take action on behalf of all our sisters and brothers and all the Earth's living creatures, and for those who've been forced from their homes. The second candle, this for Anne Geyer, who is home after being treated for pneumonia in the hospital. Kind wishes for Anne's continued recovery. This week, a number of deceased San Miguel residents were honored with memorial stones placed in the Guadiana Park. Among those memorialized were former members of the UU Fellowship, David Garrity, John Wolfe, Lydia Jane Failing. This candle stands for our gratitude for all those who have shared in the life and work of this fellowship and who are no longer among us. This candle expresses belated birthday wishes to Liz Stone, and a candle representing gratitude from Karen Kelly, who, despite her full vaccination, contracted the COVID virus here in San Miguel. But she says, the Pfizer shots definitely worked, and all the symptoms have been very unpleasant. She says, I've already turned the corner on my path to recovery, and I know I will be fine soon. This for all those dealing with this disease and those who are bringing care to them. It's often difficult to voice all the significant happenings in our lives. Some are too private, some too difficult to reduce into words. This candle represents all the joys and sorrows, all the concerns that you carry deep within your being. A moment of silence. And now to Cliff DuRand with information about this week's offering.
This fellowship is keenly aware that we are surrounded by serious poverty here in Mexico. We invest much money and time to make a difference. We support scholarships for promising students, food programs, children's health services, plus support deported Mexican nationals returning back here and migrants desperately traveling north from Central America. That is why we have long been giving at least 50% of our budget to Mexican organizations that serve the local community. A major recipient is CEDESA, a campesino organization that empowers rural people, particularly women, and nurtures their sense of agency. Our grants have paid the salaries of 4 community organizers who continue to visit 8 communities, braving coronavirus as well as cartel violence. Several of our members recently visited Sedessa and were impressed with their commitment. Sedessa is now preparing additional projects, including a community radio station and a popular school for research and education to equip campesinos with skills and knowledge, something akin to the agricultural extension agents common in the US. Thank you for opening your hearts and being generous today, so we may continue to support this and many other worthy organizations. The offering will now be collected and very gratefully received.
De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Our reading today comes from the book, We Reviving Social Hope. What has become of the great political, and historical goal of making our collective life better, of doing away with oppression, of creating conditions in which all humans can finally breathe easily. What has become of the common good? What has happened to those who once dreamed of and acted upon the growth of individual empowerment entwined with democratic control and social equality? Those are the words of Ron Aronson, who we are honored to have speak with us today. He is distinguished Professor Emeritus of the History of Ideas at Wayne State University. He has written on the French existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, South Africa, and Marxism. He has also authored Living Without God, New Directions for Atheists, Agnostics, and the Undecided. His message today comes from reflecting on his own life as an activist and philosopher. He grew up in Detroit and was educated at Wayne State University, UCLA, the University of Michigan, and Brandeis University. Swept up in the political activism of the 1960s, he became a community organizer in the Black neighborhood of New Brunswick, New Jersey, and an editor of the New Left journal, Studies on the Left. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Ron.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and particularly because it was one way of getting to San Miguel de Allende during the pandemic. We otherwise would have wanted to come in person. The last time, I think, was 3 years ago. And I'm happy to be among friends. As you know, at this moment, in the United States and in Canada, in elsewhere in North America, there are tens of thousands, even millions, and if we adjust for time zones, tens of millions of people meeting together who are thinking about hope. Except, what is that hope? Is it the kind of hope that we've just been feeling and seeing and thinking for the few minutes of this meeting? I think not. I think most Americans who are going to Sunday morning services are thinking about individual hope. Sometimes they're thinking about their own personal salvation. Sometimes they are appealing to a higher power to save them. They're thinking beyond this life, and they want the higher power to act on their behalf. That's a frequent and I think increasing strand of hope, particularly in the United States today. It's not an active kind of hope, except in the prayer, but it's a largely passive form of hope. And in a sense, it's not terrestrial. It's not hope for a better world. It's the hope that you've been talking about, thinking about, listening to for the past few minutes, doesn't really involve a higher power intervening. And it is a collective hope, and it is an active hope, a hope that entails making changes in the world, making the world into a better place, doing it together to make it more equal, to make it more just, to make it more livable. It is not simply hope as a feeling, a subjective phenomenon, but what you've been talking about and thinking about and relating to is hope as an objective force, actually acting to make the world a better place. A sense of we acting to make the world a better place. That is social hope. It's empowering, and it connects us with each other in action, and it connects us with the past of similar actions. Watching Pete Seeger singing at a meeting in the 1960s reminds us of the tradition that he was deeply part of, a political, active, empowering way of connecting the past with the present and pointing to a different future. So this kind of hope is a mood that is a mood, and very subjectively so, but it's also a sense of objective change in the world. And that's the kind of hope that I've been mostly concerned with. And that's the kind of hope that my book, We Reviving Social Hope, is about. Hope, social, active, and very often political. It is the modern world's great progressive tradition that comes out of the Enlightenment. The Unitarian Universalist Church comes out of that same tradition. But Cliff quoted from my book, and I want to look back at the beginning of it and the chapter entitled Hope in Trouble, because that hope is in trouble today. I'll read the first paragraph. Today, the hope that matters most has fallen on hard times. Even after the catastrophes of the 20th century, the great modern hope had persisted that things will one day finally get better, in Theodor Adorno's words, that one day human beings will be allowed to breathe easily. But today, we're losing the hope of a better society and a better world. And even the collective consciousness that can pose such goals. And now I'll quote again what Cliff already read. Who still anticipates the continued spread of political and social equality and democracy? Who still banks on the collective force of workers and ordinary people? Who still thinks that our children's and grandchildren's lives can be made better than our own? Who still expects that the development of science and technology and the spread of education will make the world more humane and livable? And who still sees themselves as belonging to a collectivity capable of making any of these things happen? Hope has clearly fallen on hard times. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? What has happened? If we think about the Enlightenment values, if we think about terrestrial hope, if we think about making the world better socially, politically, economically, something has drastically happened even in our own lifetimes. There is a sense of we very much in decline. It has very much lost its way. We are living in what sociologist Zygmunt Bauman called the individualized society, which is a strange contradiction in terms. But yes, an individualized society in which in so many ways, society is organized not around the collective well-being, as Cliff said, the common good, but is organized on a basis of individual well-being as the primary goal, and the individual well-being of those who can afford to pursue that well-being, and everyone else be damned. What has happened? Well, we can analyze it and point to specifically the last generation, the fetish of the free market, the notion that if you think about what the free market is supposed to be doing, each individual is acting on his or her own, and somehow magically it's supposed to cohere into a good society. And since the high time of the new free market philosophy, neoliberalism, in the mid-70s. And in that generation, things have gotten clearly worse, much worse. The free market has not brought people together. We know that. A second connected phenomenon is what I call the privatization of hope. If we're no longer living and thinking about the common good, what are we generally living and thinking about? One example would be what's happening to public schools across the United States. The creation of charter schools, that is a privatization of a public school system. People get a share of public money and go to send their children to corporate or individualized, somehow privatized schools, in which instead of the great experiment in democratic education of the American school system, something else is happening. And it's really increasingly concerned with people thinking about their own children's success. A third aspect of what's been going on is an incredible rise in the amount of cynicism about any general well-being or values, cynicism about the common good, cynicism about collective action, cynicism about anything public. These are specific, this fetish of the free market, the privatization of hope, the cynicism about collective action. These are features that have increasingly dominated the United States and advanced societies. Now, a similar statement to what I'm talking about can be found in a fascinating book that was written a couple of years after my book was published by Robert Putnam of the famous Bowling Alone, the political scientist who, with Shaylin Garrett Romney, wrote a book called The Upswing. And it's a fascinating book of social science. And my book is a book of history and philosophy. The social science that Putnam and Garrett have put together are telling us how in dozens of ways we have been in a downswing for the past generation, going back to the mid-60s. An increasingly individualized society, increasing inequality, increasingly hostile politics, a refusal of a sense of community, and an irreconcilability of political directions and political parties. There's been a great turning away from the values of the New Deal, of a sense of pursuing democracy, a turning away from the notion that we are citizens. We're not citizens first anymore. We are actually consumers first. And it's an interesting, the language is important here, because if you think about going to a zoo and you're a patron, or you're going to a university, you're a student, or you're going to a concert, and you're a member of the audience, for various kinds of participation in social activities. And all of those, if you've been paying attention, you notice all of those have become reduced to one common term that all these entities are using for the people who come and enter into them: customers. We are increasingly seen as customers. Now, this process of privatization, this process of individualization, this process of inequality has gone in hand with our growing climate crisis, which we're all and constantly aware of. And we're living in a fragmented world, and it's harder and harder to imagine coming together. Since about Obama's election, the great achievement of a Black president in the United States was accompanied with a sense of crisis, an economic crisis, number one. And number two, Obama in office led to a kind of social political crisis giving rise to the Tea Party, giving rise to individuals rejecting, what are they rejecting? They're claiming that Obama from the beginning was a socialist, and they're rejecting any collective activism. And I say they are because they're that, what should we say, that political trend which rose up to say, we don't want this president, we want to take back our country. Where are they taking it back from? They're taking it back from increasingly a coalition of whites, blacks, Latinos, a coalition of new forms of activism and reasserting something old. And the old, it was captured immediately as Obama was appeared on the stage by Donald Trump, the birtherism. He wasn't born in this country. A hostility, which if you look into it, goes back to the civil rights movement and really goes back all the way to the end of slavery and the refusal of the South to accept the end of slavery. There's been a negative trend in this society that goes back all the way to slavery. And I would argue that the current trends embodied by Trump are part and parcel of that. Now, that has been one side of a two-sided crisis. The one side of the crisis is the appearance of the Tea Party, an increasingly intransigent Republican Party, and an increasingly hostile to any progressive change 30–40% of the population on the one side. On the other side, the birtherism is mirrored by the Occupy movement in 2011 and into the present, and a new progressivism started electorally by Bernie Sanders, and a revival of socialist ideas, concrete analysis of specific problems in the United States in a progressive direction, unafraid to use the word socialism, and unafraid to begin to identify itself as preferring a socialist to a capitalist society. As you know, a majority of young people now would be willing to say that. A huge wave concerned with fairness, concerned with equality, concerned with building a better society, has emerged as a counterpoint to the birtherism, to the Tea Party, and then to Donald Trump and his movement. A community of fairness, which, for example, is visible in the growth of an organization like Democratic Socialists of America, which leaped from about 5,000 members to over 100,000 today in a few years. A lot of that built around the Bernie Sanders campaign for president, but also the fact that there are now 5, 6, 7 members of Congress who openly call themselves socialists, and a very large progressive caucus. So we are living at a time of an incredible split, nothing like it in my lifetime, between a rational, collective, hopeful mentality, a mentality of social hope, of building a better society through activism, and on the other side, increasingly racist, increasingly cultish worship of an authoritarian leader. It's a borderline fascist movement, and now built around a big lie, a prizing, accepting violence, attacking people's voting rights, wanting to attack democracy itself, a denial of science, a denial that we're living under a pandemic, a denial of the present, a reversion to the past, In other words, on the one side, there has been, in this period of crisis, a revival of social hope, a universal, inclusive direction against inequality, anti-racist, seeking everyone's well-being, a universalist vision inspired by the best principles of the Enlightenment on the one side. And on the other side, we're living in a society with a huge force of denial, not 10% or 20%, but 30, 40% at least, an anti-social solidarity group. And if we look at today, the hold of the big lie and the actions taken to institutionalize the big lie, it would not be an exaggeration to call this a form of social madness, an anti-hope. The hopeful strengthening of the last few years on the one side has given rise to an anti-hope force, which wants to go back to the past, which is afraid of the future. A future, by the way, in which the United States is headed irrevocably towards a non-white majority already in the public school system. Well, this is a longer story and requires a longer analysis, but I'm going to limit myself to a couple of lessons from history to conclude, and then we can have some questions and thoughts. One, the obvious fact is that we're in a situation of something like fascism or Nazism or authoritarianism, a form of social madness. I say madness, a denial of the most fundamental things that have been happening in the last year. People looking at a disease and refusing to acknowledge it and refusing to figure out how to deal with it, or looking at climate change and refusing to figure out how to deal with it. Denial is at the heart of this movement. And on the other side, the movement of social hope, which is concerned with solidarity, a different kind of solidarity than the people who invaded the Capitol on January 6th, but a social solidarity which is universal, reaching out widely, seeking a wave of reform. And one of the good slogans of that might be all in it together. Remember that from last year. It's still there. People who are willing to say we're all in it together, and the emergency workers are as important as anybody else. There was a time after World War II when that spirit of sacrifice of people being all in it together to defeat Nazism led to a wave of reform. For example, the Labour Party coming to power in Britain and creating lots of forms. Similarly, in the United States, Black Lives Matter has emerged as not a Black-focused movement, but as a movement trying to look at institutional racism throughout the society, new demands for minimum wage, new demands for expansion of Medicare. All of this is coming out of the crisis of 2020, and it's in the air. There is so much positive change in the air, and yet at the same time, social insanity is in the air, and a New Deal is in the air. So we are really in the midst of a social hope moment with a social madness current on the other side. And the question, of course, is what do we do about it? Well, the point is it's not going away so easily. The social madness is, as you can see, the big lie has taken over a huge part of the country, to the point of disenfranchising people, to the point of undoing democracy. And I think we're in for it. We're in for a considerable struggle, and it's still to happen. And the only point I would like to conclude on is that this is a major political battle. This is nothing we can be comfortable about, we can be complacent about. Not only are we, of course, we know what side we're on, but it means taking sides actively, and it means figuring out ways of defeating the antisocial and the social madness forces that are not just Donald Trump, but a whole large mass movement. I'll stop there because I think we need some conversation, questions, and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And having been reminded of the madness of these dark times, we want to close with the voice of Black America, a people that has found spiritual inspiration in a history of collective struggle against racial oppression. This is music that always moves me deeply. Listen to the words, and it will move you as well.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the roaring sea. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod. Lives in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered.
Now we extinguish this chalice, but not the flame that burns within us for social justice. We carry on in the hope that together we can build a better world.
When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Is there aught we hold in common with the greedy parasite who would lash us into serfdom and would crush us with their might? Is there anything left to us but to organize and fight? For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving amidst the wonders we have made. For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. All the world has owned by idle drones is ours and ours alone. We have laid the wide foundations, built it skyward stone by stone. It is ours not to slave and but to master and to own. For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn. But without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel can turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of